Welcome to Business Notes. Our guest today is Lynda McDermott. Lynda engages leaders and teams to navigate change and implement strategic action plans for improved results. Lynda has conducted leadership and team coaching in over 35 countries in a wide variety of industries. In addition, she's coached individuals up and down organizational levels. Lynda works with these business professionals and teams, both virtually and face-to-face, to tackle their leadership challenges to guarantee their personal team and organizational success. Lynda, it is a pleasure to have you on Business Notes today.
Well, I'm really happy to be here too, Diana. Thank you so much for offering me this opportunity. It's been one heck of a year, and it's just nice to be able to share some insights with your viewers.
Yes, I'm anxious to hear from you. And in the introduction, I mentioned that you've worked in 35 countries. You must be in constant state of jet lag.
Well, I was. Of course, that has changed. I haven't even been on an airplane since the 1st of March. So, so much for the 35 countries. But yeah, over the years, I've worked in over 35 countries. It has been so enlightening and enjoyable to know that, leadership and team issues are the same all over the world. And why would that be? Because we're dealing with human beings.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, well, what do you think is the biggest leadership challenge facing executives and team leaders today as we move toward the future?
Well, let me first start off in answering that by saying I am not alone. In fact, all of us have been impacted by this pandemic and the economic lockdowns and so forth. And it has been, I have to say, I've been in business for 35 years. It has been the most challenging year I have ever faced. And I've been through Black October when I started my business in 98-7, the 2008 financial crisis and so forth. But this has been the worst for me and my clients. And I don't need to go over a litany of everything that we've been through. What I will remind us all, though, is that everybody has dealt with this in a different way. Some people have lost loved ones. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people have had to change their jobs. Some people are now working from home and homeschooling. So, I mean, there's a whole litany of changes that we've gone through. And I think one of the challenges for leaders is to be empathetic to the change with themselves for the changes they've been going through, and also the changes that their people and their colleagues and their clients have been going through, because we've all been through it differently and we need to be empathetic. Right. More specifically, what I think one of the challenges is to figure out what we learned from these past 9-10 months. There's a process that I use with my clients called an after action review. I didn't make it up. It was actually started by the U.S. Army to help them evaluate the successes and failures of their combat missions. And it's now been adopted by lots of corporations. And basically what it is that you get your team together and you look backwards and you say, okay, what did we learn? What did we do well? What do we want to take forward? What needs to change? What do we need to improve, and so forth. So I think that's a challenge, is to learn from this last year and then to set up an agenda for change in 2021 that is positive focused, action oriented, and that will help you and your team move forward in a very positive, optimistic way.
Right. So what are your most important strategies that you recommend for your clients as they are dealing with these challenges going forward?
Well, I think doing an after action review or lessons learned process is a strategy. I think there's another strategy that's emerging. I was talking to one of my bank CEO clients the other day, and what he was saying, I basically asked him, I said, so what are you thinking going forward? He said, one of the things I'm concerned about is I observed some of my people, both direct reports and direct reports -1, not stepping up to the plate this last year. Jim Collins, whose name you may know as an organizational consultant and author, has basically, I'll have to paraphrase him, do you have the right people on the bus? So I think one of the strategies for leaders going forward is to do an objective assessment of your people in terms of not only the jobs they've done, but the jobs you need them to do going forward, and doing an assessment either by yourself or with other members of your team. Are these still the right people for the job? I'm not advocating that you get rid of people, but you may need to reassign them. You may need to re-engineer their jobs. I don't know what the specific strategy would be, but I would say take a hard look at your people and make sure you've got the right people on the bus.
Right, right. Good advice. And you mentioned a male leader just now, but do you think there's a difference between how women and men lead?
Well, actually, it's very interesting. I mostly worked with men early in my career because there weren't that many women in what we would call leadership positions. But that has evolved over the last 15 years. And I would say at this point, probably my clients are 50-50, 50% men, 50% women. And I have no preference either way, even though I am a woman. I don't focus just on women and I don't focus just on men. So I use an assessment program called the Leadership 360, and it was developed by the Management Research Group, who not only administers the assessments, but also does research based on the data that comes in from their clients, such as myself. And what they have found, and they repeat the research about every 3 or 4 years, what they have found is that there is really not a statistically significant difference between successful women who lead and successful men based on their assessment information. However, there are a couple of exceptions. One is men score higher on the leadership characteristics called strategic and persuasive, and women score higher on what we call tactical and production. What that translates to is that if men have the opportunity, I'll make a generalization. If men have the opportunity to go play golf, or go out to dinner with somebody, or stay and clean up their to-do list, the men find their way to the door. Not anymore, not literally, but women, on the other hand, are prone to want to finish up. They're prone to wanting to clean up the to-do list. So sometimes they miss out on the networking opportunities or deprioritize them compared to getting the job done. And they also have a tendency to want the work to speak for themselves, to speak for themselves and not stand up and quote, sell themselves. They don't like the idea of, they think it's, bragging to stand up and persuade others about why you should get a job or get a project assignment. And men in general don't have a problem with that. But as with any generalization, just be careful, know that they are stereotypes, but just be sensitive to that this is based on research, that there are some differences in how men and women lead. No right, no wrong, just differences.
Interesting observations. And Lynda, you talked about assessments, and let's talk about those for just a second, because I use them as well. And we know they're not, 100% accurate, but let's address the fact that they are a tool that help leaders lead in many, many different situations. Can you address that just for a moment?
Yes. In all of my coaching work, I do some form of assessment. Now, that could be just as simple as interviewing the boss, like this new client I got, I'm interviewing the boss, or it could also involve interviewing colleagues or team members that report to the person I'm going to be coaching, or it could take on a more formal kind of survey assessment. I tend to use DISC, the Leadership 360 that I just mentioned. I have a coaching call after this call today where we administer the Strengths Finder to this individuals. I don't treat the data as the end all and be all, but it gives me as a coach, and gives the coachee an opportunity to get some objective data-based assessment. I do a lot of work with Center for Creative Leadership, and they have a wide variety of assessment tools. So I'm a firm proponent in using them, but I think it's a tool. It is not the tool. I don't think you base all your diagnosis and your interventions just on the assessment data, but very important tool that I've used a lot over the years.
Right, right. And it gives you a good place to start.
Yes.
And the person that you're coaching put the information in. So it really helps give them a better view of themselves as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the 360, if you do 360, it gives the observers, whoever they are, bosses, colleagues, whomever, an opportunity to anonymously provide data and feedback and comments as well. So it's a great tool, or they are a great tool.
Yeah, right, right. So if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners, what piece of advice would you give for the future?
Well, it's interesting. I did a recent webinar on navigating change, and I started off the webinar, it was a virtual webinar, saying, I hate change, which is ironic considering that that's really my life's work, is to really help people figure out where they are in their life or their career or whatever, figuring out where they want to go, what's their vision for the future, and then figuring out how do we get from here to there, which is kind of a change oriented action plan. So that's really what I do for a living with my clients. And then what this pandemic, like, I know I've never been I'm not a first, I don't try things out first. I forget what it's called, but I'm a laggard when it comes to change. I let other people do it, and then I learn from them, and then I decide if I want to pick it up and so forth. Well, I didn't have much of a choice this year because, beginning in March was my last plane trip, and my calendar was wiped clean with all my clients canceling their face-to-face training programs, coaching programs, and so forth. So I think maybe in March I was in denial. I was saying, I was listening to the news like every day. When is this going to end? And then, of course, the economic lockdowns happened. And at some point, I don't know when it was, I should have kept a diary, but I think it was sometime in April, I just said to myself, as one coach to another, Lynda, get over it. Get over it. You have no idea what's going to happen, how long this change is going to be with us. So you better pivot. You better pivot. You better learn some new skills, learn some new technology methodologies, learn how to interact with your clients in a different medium and so forth. So you just better get with it. And so I started signing up for every workshop that I could sign up for. I didn't know what Zoom was in March because I'd never used Zoom. I was either telecon or face-to-face. So I learned Zoom. So now I'm on Zoom today with Diane, and I run Zoom workshops. And so my advice going into 2021 is back to sort of where we started. Do an after action review, set up an agenda for change for 2021, but don't put your blinders on because we don't know what we don't know. Just yesterday, I think I was listening to the news and saw that in the UK, there's a new strain of the virus. So we don't know what we don't know, but I think we have a responsibility as leaders to keep our teams focused forward, to prioritize items that we need to be working on that will have the biggest bang for the buck, and then kind of keep our head on a swivel so that we're constantly listening, watching, observing. You can't predict the future, but you can become as aware of it as you possibly can, and then keep regrouping your teams to say, do we still have the right priorities, or do we need to move something up or off the list based on new information that we're getting? So, I start off this with my response, I hate change. Well, I still don't love it, but I've just accepted the fact that this is just the way that life is. And so I've got to be really good at managing myself around this change, helping my daughter, helping my husband, helping my team, to manage change in our own ways, and then be vigilant. Just be vigilant about what's going on in our world around us.
And this was such a huge change and affected everyone. But you're right, change goes on constantly, and we do need to be aware. And I think the word you were looking for was precedent. So you look for the precedent to be set before you jump in typically, but
Yes.
you
Yes.
took the bull by the horns, as so many of us have had to do during this particular situation. So good for you, because some people haven't done that. And Lynda, you've written numerous articles and about, I think, 13 books. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's more like 4 books, but that's okay. 13 articles for sure. And
Okay.
I think 4 books.
Okay. And those are on your website, and the books can be, people can get those from Amazon.
Yes.
Okay. And what are those books about?
Well, the first one was called Caught in the Middle, and I wrote that I think the 80s. And it was when middle management was going through a big change around, are we workers and managers, or are we just managers? So it was called Caught in the Middle, and it was really about what is the role of middle management in organizations, which of course has since evolved. The second book I wrote is called World Class Teams, and I've worked in over 35 countries around the world, and with a client of mine at Pfizer, we developed a methodology called World-Class Teams for launching and developing teams of from leadership teams down to product teams, project teams, and so forth. So we created a methodology for launching and sustaining the development of these teams. And then the book itself was really a compilation of those processes. And so both of those were published by New York publishers. Then I worked with another person to do a self-published book on virtual teams. And so that was really actually it was premature because we published that, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago. And that was before virtual teams exploded as they've done now. I actually looked over the content the other day and I said, you know what? We were ahead of the game on this one. So those are the three biggest sellers that I've done. I've done some booklets on emotional intelligence and leadership teams that you can get PDFs from us on those two things. So it's been, I haven't done a lot of, well, I've done blogs this year, but I haven't done any books or booklets. And maybe what I do next year is take some of my blogs and compile them into a leadership book of some type. I don't know, haven't decided.
Looks like a good idea, and what you've learned through this as well.
Yeah.
And what do you wish you had known early on in your business that you know now, but you didn't know then?
I think, well, there are two tales to that for me. One I'm still in a dilemma about. The other one I'm not in a dilemma about. So I've struggled my entire business career on whether or not I should niche. There are proponents of saying, find your industry, find your topic, and just stay in that lane. And I just, for years, just resisted that because I was always curious about a new industry or a new methodology or a new, And so I didn't want to go into a niche because I thought I would be bored. And anyway, so, but I'm now being coached by someone that Diane and I are both coached by, and her big thing is niche, niche, niche. So I'm still resisting it in total, but in terms of the course I'm going to work on this next year, I am going to focus on biopharma women, because the biopharma industry is where I had my most experience. And there's a piece of me that wants to give back to women, and women are struggling right now, I think, because of the multiple demands, which we've always had, but with this having to work from home and homeschooling and so forth, I just want to make sure that I'm giving them the tools and perspectives that they need. So I'm going to niche for my course. But other than that, I'm going to stay a generalist. The other thing that I wish that I had done a better job of, I've done a decent job, but not a great job. My father always used to say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And he was the world's greatest networker before there was even a phrase called networking. He was head of the booster group, but at my school, I was head cheerleader and he was the head of the booster group. He was the head of his country club. He was president of the country club board. He just, and it seemed, I was raised in Columbus, Ohio, and he played for Woody Hayes. So he knew a lot of people through Ohio State, and he just seemed to know everybody. And Columbus was not and is not it's not a small town, but he seemed to know everybody. And I seem to have taken on the notion that let my work speak for itself. And so I have not done as good of a job as I could have. I've done okay, but not as good of a job as I could have in terms of building a network that, has tails and lasts a long time. And again, I've got a good following, but I could have done a better job. Let's put it that way. So I wish that I would have spent more time on building long-lasting relationships. So those are two areas that niching and networking would be the two that I would look back on.
Right. And Lynda, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, I think you're going to put some contact information at the bottom of this video. I'm kind of old. Email me. Okay. Email me. I have a great assistant. I'm really big on offering 15-minute chats for free. So if you're not even sure what you want to talk about, but you just want to chat, just email Janine. She manages my calendar. Well, email me, and then she picks up my email. And so it's lmcdermott@equiproint.com. And just say, I'd like 15-minute chat with Lynda. No obligation, no nothing, just it's my way of giving back my time and having a strategy for building up that network of relationships that I'm trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Lynda, you have brought some, I mean, it's clear that any leader at any level, male or female, can learn a lot from the work that you do. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from you during the coming year. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you, Diane, for offering me this opportunity. And I hope that whatever we've talked about today will be helpful to our viewers.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you. Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Lynda McDermott, certified speaking professional, in-person and virtual facilitator, and executive coach. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.